As I said at the top of the show, we're going to talk about teacher diversity, or more accurately, specifically, the lack of teacher diversity in North Carolina teaching workforce. And we are joined by two journalists from WRAL News in Raleigh. Kelly Hinchcliffe, she is the education reporter for WRAL News and has been on the show with us before, so welcome back, Kelly.
Thank you.
And Lena Tillett. Lena is a reporter, anchor reporter with WRAL News. So thank you and welcome to Education Matters.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Well, first, let me apologize for my rather sinister looking hand. I will try not to aggressively point with it, but yes, I broke my finger this week, tripping and falling. So yes, it is an interesting accoutrement to wear on the air. All right, well, first of all, impressive work, ladies, on this important topic. People who watch our show know that we've talked a lot about issues of race and diversity. And I really encourage our viewers to go to WRAL.com, search education, and you can find the whole thing. Because what aired was just a fraction of the work that you did. There's so much, it's really great stuff, so thank you. Now, you received a grant, or I guess a fellowship from the Education Writers Association, Kelly.
Yes.
Tell me about how you decided to this topic and pursue that.
I wanted to look at teacher recruitment in North Carolina, and actually the diversity piece came later. After I received the grant, I started talking with people about this topic, and it was amazing to me how often the topic of diversity came up. And I knew that across North Carolina, 80% of teachers were white, 80% were female, but I hadn't really heard the data, drilled down into specific school systems. So I said, I want to look at all 115 public school systems and see what does this look like, rural, urban, all kinds of areas. And I also wanted to go look at the teacher pipeline. So look at the colleges of education and see what are they doing, what does the enrollment look like at those types of schools, because that's really the best predictor of what future teachers will look like in North Carolina. And of course, I asked Lena to join me on the project, and I'm so glad that she did. I'm really happy with how it turned out. Well,
and this is we're gonna show a clip here in just a minute, because one of the things that I've said before on the show is that in North Carolina, we still have students in 2019 that could go through their entire 12 years of school and never see a teacher that looks like them.
And which is stunning.
Which is kind of stunning, right? Yeah. So the clip I want to show right now is a student who found someone who looked like him, but it's about a little about their relationship. So let's roll that, and then I want to talk to you about it, Lena.
Okay.
I was like, wow, I did that. I'm trying to figure out the defining moment. What made him say, Mr. Tyson, you did something that I still can't remember. I'm just trying to figure that out.
You're my PE teacher, and I trusted you, so that's the reason I decided to do your club.
Trust has to be earned. It has to be earned. Kids know sincerity. They know when you got their back, and they know when they're just one of the students in your classroom. And they know that you are out for their good. They have this sense, they have this sixth sense about themselves that says, I matter. And for him to say, trust me, that says volumes. Because trust in the eyes of a student is almost saying, man, I trust you like a father.
Powerful, Lena. Tillett.
Okay.
My apologies.
Everyone in the South calls me Tillett,
exactly.
so I'm so used to it.
Yeah, there you go. I've been on Eastern North Carolina. All right, Lena.
But yeah, that was
powerful stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How did that feel to you?
Well, so the way that all got set up was, first I interviewed the Stevens family, and I just wanted to know about both the parents and the kids' experience in school. And Trey mentioned Mr. Tyson and said that in addition to him having an impact on him and Mr. Tyson being his only African-American teacher, male teacher, he has had 2 African-American female teachers. He said that he
had a specific impact on him. And he also said that he decided to join his club, his Books and Bow Ties club, after school, which means not only is he connecting with this teacher in the classroom, but he wants to spend more time with him after class, right? And that's not something that all teachers can say,
right,
that students want to spend even more time with you after they complete their classroom time. So I think Mr. Tyson wanted to emphasize that, yeah, it was tough on him. And I wanted him to make sure that he was being a good student and sitting up straight and talking loud and projecting when he spoke and just generally growing to be a young man that could be proud of himself. And so he was surprised that Trey would even then say, Mr. Tyson was one of my favorite teachers. He thought, really? I was so tough on you. I didn't know that this was...
that happens sometimes, doesn't it? We realize that
happened.
the person who was the hardest on you was the one that cared the most.
Right.
And that, I
Yeah.
mean, the relationship part, I mean, you talk to a lot of teachers. I mean, in some of our work at the Public School Forum, we focus a lot on the relationships. Did that come up a lot in some of the conversations about the teacher-student relationships?
It did. Even off camera, we had people who we talked to who did not want to be part of this story but became emotional talking about teachers that they had. And I think the emotion was something that just that really surprised us as we worked on this story. We saw quite a bit of it.
I know we're gonna show some stats on screen, and this kind of goes into, does anything really surprise either of you? I mean, some of these numbers, even though I knew some of them, they still shocked me too.
Well, I think one of the most shocking numbers was from the family. The fact that the parents went to school a couple decades ago and each had one African-American teacher, and then 2 decades later, their eldest daughter, who is an ECU grad now, she had one black teacher, and their son has had 3. And that obviously shows it's indicative of not much progress in terms of hiring more diverse teachers in the state. And they were going to schools in Greenville, North Carolina, which was predominantly African American. So even in that situation where the student body is majority non-white, the teacher did not reflect the population, and that's the case in Wake County.
Right.
As well,
And
20 years later.
Exactly. That was a shocking. Kelly, you talked to the state's College of Education. You looked at their numbers.
Right.
You know, the numbers aren't getting any better. The anecdote from the family really shouldn't surprise us because 30 years ago we were 80% white, 80% female. That really hasn't changed. What have you heard from education leaders in response to this story in this report?
The major things that I heard are that they want more marketing for the teaching profession and that they want people to talk about it more, to try to encourage especially younger students to become teachers. I heard that they, of course, want more money for scholarships, and one of the other things was the North Carolina Teaching Fellows program to try to expand that. Right now, in their first year back, they have 74 students.
Right.
The old program used to have about 400 to 500 students each year.
Last word from you, Lena. We talk about representation and sort of role modeling. I mean, as a person of color yourself, could you relate to that? I mean, I remember it was Trey's sister, right? That made the comment, and I don't know if this was on the package, where she said that she had a teacher who said that you were smart for a black girl, which was hard to hear.
It was difficult for her. Research shows representation matters. Research shows it matters both emotionally for a student and academically for a student. Unfortunately, in this Johns Hopkins story, Johns Hopkins research that we sourced, they spoke about the role model effect and how in some cases, white teachers have lower expectations of students of color. This could be implicit bias, this could be unconscious bias, but the bottom line is the research shows that it exists. As a result, this is why they say having teachers of color who tend to have higher expectations for students of color is going to allow for students to do potentially better in school. I think that research was really important for us to find and acknowledge because this isn't just saying, we think it should,
Right.
students of color should have teachers of color just because.
It's real.
Because there's research that backs it up.
Yeah, we actually had the researchers on talking about that a few months ago. So, yeah, it was important, and the research was good. Kelly, Lena, again, our viewers, go to WRL.com, search education, and you can find the whole thing. And I really encourage you to look at it because you've got so many interviews and things that were not aired, and people should dig into it. So, again, thanks for coming on to talk about it. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, when we come back, we're going to be joined by 2 educators who have a big role in making sure our children have the teachers they need. But before we go to break, see if you can answer this question. Black students make up roughly 26% of North Carolina's public school enrollment. What percentage of students are placed in academically and intellectually gifted tracks are black?
Education Matters is brought to you each week in part by Paragon Bank, serving others, enriching lives.